The Mississippi River flows through the heart of America, a place of rich tradition and stunning landscapes. It is also home to some of the most productive farmland in the world. But this success comes with a price. The very fertilizers that help farmers produce record yields are greening America's waters, creating dead zones upriver and downriver.
We are wasting a lot of fertilizer, a lot of energy, a lot of money, at the same time that we're having very serious impacts on aquatic ecosystems.
It's not natural to be swimming in the water and not see living organisms.
Unswimmable, undrinkable water that is inhospitable to life.
We've painted the world, all of the agricultural lands of the world, in phosphorus and nitrogen.
Why is it becoming unsafe? Why are the nitrates going up?
Meanwhile, on the land, valuable soil is washing away. Farming practices have created a series of unintended consequences.
The lake will be filled with sediment in 300 years, and it will be gone in little more than a few generations.
Farmers, scientists, and citizens are working together toward a more sustainable future. New ideas are being tested. Policies are being challenged.
It's change. It's hard to break old habits and old traditions.
I'm very optimistic. We've gone from axe and ox to tractors to GPSs to precision agriculture. We've come a long, long way.
In a world where the demand for food is expected to double by mid-century, the future health of America's agricultural lands and waters is at stake.
Our food supply is on the line and is headed toward a watery grave in the Gulf of Mexico.
Troubled Waters, a Mississippi River story, is a special production of the University of Minnesota's Bell Museum of Natural History. Funding has been provided by Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, the McKnight Foundation, National Science Foundation, Mississippi River Fund, and these funding partners. Here in the Gulf of Mexico, not far from the mouth of the Mississippi River, shrimp fishermen are trawling the waters for their livelihood. On a good day, a shrimp fisherman might haul in 2,000 pounds of shrimp. But these days, Captain Wayne Sheremy is down on his luck. He fears that he may have steered his boat into the oxygen-starved waters of the dead zone, where shrimp and fish cannot survive.
As you can see, there ain't very much in the catch. I've been doing this since I was 16 years old. It just keeps getting worse and worse.
It's hard to come here and see people suffering every day, the people you've been living with all your life that always made a good living, and now all of a sudden they're suffering. It's a sad situation, I tell you, very sad, very, very sad.
Every spring, the Mississippi River delivers plumes of sediments rich in fertilizer runoff into the Gulf of Mexico, causing a massive algal bloom. Eventually, the algae die and fall to the seafloor, where bacteria feed on it and consume most of the available oxygen. The result is a landscape as lifeless and alien as the moon.
The high production of algae and the decrease in the oxygen basically forms this large dead zone that is predominant in the area throughout most of the summer. It's not natural. It's not natural to be swimming in the water and not see living organisms. And that's just a sign that the system is really not doing very well. In fact, it's doing very poorly.
Scientist Nancy Rabelais has been documenting the size of the dead zone since 1985, taking measurements over a 10,000 square mile region. In that time, the dead zone has doubled and now rivals the state of Massachusetts in size.
This is the oxygen level, this green line, so it's quite high at the surface, and then it drops precipitously and then really drops to 0.6, which is well below the value that makes it the dead zone.
Dead zones occur where rivers and oceans meet and are largely a result of agricultural runoff of the fertilizer nitrogen and, to a lesser extent, phosphorus. The Gulf of Mexico is home to the second largest human-induced dead zone in the world. In the last 50 years, human activity has contributed to more than 400 dead zones worldwide. Today, shrimp fishermen are heading to distant waters as the dead zone encroaches on their traditional fishing grounds.
You can see where the shrimp boats, there's some over there. So they're avoiding the dead zones.
We gotta go miles and miles away from here to try to find anything that worthwhile to make any money.
More than profit has been hurt.
It's hard to look at a full-grown man who's always provided for his family and always loved what he did. It's hard to tell him I can't give him any credit. You know, I can't give him fuel on credit. I can't give him ice on credit because I don't know that he's going to be able to catch the fish or the shrimp that it's going to take to be able to pay me back.
We got problems with the water. You know, how bad are we going to let it get before we do something about it? You know, that's the scary part.
Too much nitrogen fertilizer is the main culprit poisoning these Gulf waters. But upriver, nitrogen fertilizer has contributed greatly to America's agricultural productivity, enhancing the nation's reputation as a land of plenty. Corn and soybeans are America's biggest crops, with over 160 million acres in production. 50 years ago, a farmer would have been proud of 70 bushels of corn per acre. Today, yields as high as 200 bushels are not uncommon, due in part to crop genetics, water management, and nitrogen fertilizer. In the early part of the 20th century, in an event that would alter the course of human history, scientist Fritz Haber discovered how to pull or fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, converting it from an abundant but inert gas into ammonia, a highly reactive form of nitrogen. Used as raw material for explosives in World War I, the industrial production of nitrogen was later developed by Carl Bosch, dramatically boosting the growth of food crops. Nitrogen fertilizer is today responsible for sustaining nearly half of the 6.8 billion people on Earth. But the widespread use of nitrogen fertilizer has created a series of unintended consequences that are threatening America's lakes, rivers, and drinking water. It is summertime here in Fairmont, Minnesota.
What'd you get?
A .876.
What was your highest reading, Jack?
A .90.
On the leading edge, brothers Dick and Jack Gerhardt are experimenting with groundbreaking new tools that promise to reduce their use of nitrogen fertilizer. This infrared device is a handheld version of Green Seeker technology, which reads chlorophyll levels in the plants and determines exactly how much nitrogen is needed to achieve optimum yields. It is estimated that about half of the nitrogen fertilizer put on agricultural fields is actually taken up by the plants. As a result, farmers sometimes apply extra fertilizer as a form of crop insurance.
There's no question it's easier to just go put nitrogen out up front, hope it's going to stay in place, plant your crop, and go fishing. I mean, and come back and harvest it in the fall. But, you know, with a big rain event or anything like that, then it ends up being excess, and it ends up getting away from us into the rivers and watersheds and things, and it just, you know, compounds that. So like any industry, we've got to look at getting more efficient at what we're doing, and that's where this technology fits in.
The green seeker allows the Gerhardts to spoon feed nitrogen to their corn at key moments in its growing season. Earlier in the spring, they applied 1/3 less than the recommended amount of nitrogen to their 4,400 acres. Now, halfway into the season, the infrared sensors can determine in real time how much more nitrogen, if any, is needed.
Well, we need to get the growing degree units here to figure out what stage that corn is at.
Such innovations help farmers like the Gerhardts hedge their bets against unpredictable weather and volatile market forces. In June, news of additional corn acres in production sent the futures market tumbling a full $1.40 in value.
That's our intent to produce is 800,000 bushels. That's our goal. So you take $1.40 times 800,000 and you're over $1 million swing in 20 days. It's not that lucrative to have those kinds of swings. We constantly get government reports, supply and demand reports, try to anticipate what they're going to say, try to react when you do find out what they're telling us.
In 2007, as part of the Renewable Fuel Standard, the federal government mandated that 15 billion gallons of corn ethanol be produced by the year 2022, in an effort to reduce the country's dependence on foreign oil. This government-sponsored demand has motivated farmers to grow more corn, including Gerhard, who decided to switch his corn and soybean crops to all corn.
We have armies fighting wars over oil and people losing lives over oil, and that's, in my mind, it's subsidizing our oil here. So whatever we can grow locally, it also is providing jobs locally. It's especially in rural areas for us, it's a big advantage having that. But so at this point, most of the corn that I grow is ending up in ethanol plants.
Corn ethanol is controversial, partly because it requires fossil fuel to produce the nitrogen fertilizer that is used to grow corn.
When we looked at all the numbers, the net result is about 80% of the energy in every gallon of corn ethanol is fossil energy it took to grow the corn and especially to turn that corn into ethanol. And only 20% is new energy.
In other words, it takes 8 gallons of fossil fuel to create 10 gallons of corn ethanol. As one of America's most plentiful commodity crops, corn is heavily subsidized by the United States Farm Bill. In the 1930s, in the midst of the Great Depression, U.S. farm legislation was created to provide emergency relief to farmers and bring stability to America's food economy. Every 5 to 7 years, the Farm Bill is rewritten and today rewards farmers for maximizing crop production.
The current commodity bill pays producers, the more bushels you produce, the more payment you get. So the incentive drives more bushels.
The ethanol mandate, like the U.S. Farm Bill, drives farmers to grow more corn because they are guaranteed income security.
I've sort of facetiously have said that if the Farm Bill required everyone to have a pine tree in the middle of their field, we would have a pine tree in the middle of every field because it's that strong of a driver.
By rewarding farmers for maximizing their yields and thus their use of nitrogen fertilizer, Farm Bill policy has unintentionally played a major role in the creation of the Gulf's dead zone. The Mississippi River flows through the heart of the United States, draining water from 31 states and 2 Canadian provinces. More than 18 million people depend on the river for their drinking water. The majority of the nitrogen fertilizer that contributes to the dead zone comes from the 10 states that make up the Grain Belt, an intensely farmed region where corn is king. But the heavy use of nitrogen fertilizer is not just a distant problem in the Gulf. It is taking its toll locally by leaking into the ground and contaminating people's well water. Here in southeastern Minnesota, Arlene and Laverne Nelson manage a herd of 80 dairy cows on their 360-acre farm. As producers of grade A milk, the Nelsons are required to test their water annually for nitrogen and other contaminants. In the late 1990s, they became concerned when a series of tests revealed higher than normal levels of nitrates, a form of nitrogen, in their well water. Then in 2001, nitrate levels inexplicably jumped to 15 parts per million, more than 50% above the federal safety limit of 10 parts per million.
Humans are not supposed to have over 10 parts per million like babies and so on. And when it gets up to 15, cattle drinking 25 to 35 gallons of water a day, it can't be good for them neither.
About an hour-and-a-half conference call with all the area conservationists.
Worried about their health and the health of their 13 grandchildren, the Nelsons installed a reverse osmosis system to protect their drinking water. Preliminary studies suggest that chronic exposure to elevated nitrates may lead to some forms of cancer. High levels of nitrate in the heart of farming country are not uncommon. In Des Moines, Iowa, the city was forced to install the world's largest nitrate removal plant to protect their municipal drinking water. In 2001, the Nelsons became certified as organic dairy farmers, having used no chemicals or synthetic nitrogen fertilizer on their land for a full 3 years. Nevertheless, nitrate levels remained high.
It just seems almost unfair. It's like we have a well, been using it for years. It shouldn't, why is it becoming unsafe? Why are the nitrates going up?
6 years later, they became alarmed when one of their cows unexpectedly died.
It isn't like she lingered. She just got up. I don't know, we were going to move her, and she just dropped over dead. So we did do an autopsy. We did post her, so to speak. I know the liver was not good, and one of the processors had commented that in the last, I can't say for sure how many years, that he's noticed that some of the livers are not good on the animals.
A subsequent water test revealed that nitrate levels had spiked to 46 parts per million, more than 4 times the federal safety limit.
All the organs are being overloaded with extra jobs to do, and which shortens the life of the organ. It also takes away some of the filtering systems of the liver, and so the excess nitrogen can really be a real detriment to the health and the I guess for me it would be the oxygen carrying capacity of the bloodstream is greatly reduced when we have a high presence of free and available nitrogen or nitrates, depending upon the form.
Though the Nelsons will never be able to pinpoint the cause of their cow's death, they did not want to take any chances with their other dairy cows.
We knew we had to do something because we could see it in our cattle. They had diarrhea and and stuff, and so it wasn't getting any better. So just bite the bullet and do it.
They decided to drill a new well, nearly twice as deep as their existing well, at a cost of $26,000. This expensive solution has not brought the Nelsons peace of mind.
I feel we need to do more testing. We need to be asking the hard questions, and we need to not just accept the fact that everyone can just drill a new well. And where do we go after this? How often do we have to drill another well?
The source of nitrogen contamination on the Nelson farm is unclear. Sources of nitrogen such as manure from their cow herd could have seeped into their contaminated well. But surrounding their dairy farm in all directions are acres of agricultural fields that use nitrogen fertilizer. Pinpointing the source of nitrogen that contaminated their well is difficult, since water travels unpredictably in the aquifer below. The Nelsons are safe for now because they penetrated a deeper aquifer. But issues of water purity are of concern to everyone, including city dwellers, as the mayor of Minneapolis points out.
If we're really going to clean this river and clean the communities around it, everybody has to own their part of it. Sure, there's a part of this that has to do with agriculture, but look here at a city that is filled with asphalt, where water that comes in the form of rain then washes directly into the river. We have to step up and do much more.
Water running off city streets concentrates chemicals and fertilizers into drains that wash to the river. When fertilizers are applied to golf courses and green lawns, these chemicals can also leak into lakes and rivers and cause problems.
The phosphorus that goes on your lawn washes directly into the river. That helps feed algae growth and other blooms throughout the river down here. And all the things that we put into the river have had horrible consequences. We ought to just go out into our own front yard and own what we're doing to our own yard and recognize that your yard and your street is a beach. And if you don't want to swim in it, if you don't want to drink in it, then don't put it on your lawn or your street.
In 1972, the federal government passed the Clean Water Act to protect America's waterways from pollution. Targeting what is called point source pollution, or pollution from a pipe, the law largely regulated industrial pollutants, wastewater, and municipal sewage. But the law has not fully addressed non-point source pollution, such as runoff from city streets or runoff from agricultural fields. As a result, many lakes and stretches of rivers are threatened, including Lake Pepin, a treasured resource on the upper Mississippi River. A popular tourist destination, Lake Pepin is a critical sanctuary for America's migratory birds. But beneath its shimmering surface, excess nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment are stirring up trouble. This morning, Mike Davis is checking up on some of the river's native mussels, the most endangered group of animals in North America. Over the last century, the Higgins eye mussel has suffered a series of assaults brought on partly by human pollution.
About 70% of North America's freshwater mussel species are imperiled today, and that's a reflection of how we've treated the land and how we've lived our lives in our watersheds. The river life takes the brunt of all these insults, and I think if people know more about that, they'd care about it. They know about the wildlife in their backyard, but they know very little about what's in the rivers.
Davis's attempts to reestablish native mussels in Lake Pepin have, so far, not been met with success. The delicate larvae are especially vulnerable.
They're very sensitive to ammonia, nitrogen ammonia, and to sediments and the quality of the sediments in the river.
Filter feeders, mussels cleanse the water and provide vital support to a wide array of life.
Mussel beds are really the freshwater equivalent of a coral reef. They provided and structured habitat for many, many other animals, provided substrate for plants to grow on, and then aquatic insects to feed from and fish to come and eat. We've simplified our ecosystem, and the nutrients that come into the river today are less able to be assimilated by the organisms in the river because there are fewer species to do that job.
With its natural defenses down, the waters of Lake Pepin are suffering. In freshwater, too much phosphorus can create suffocating algal blooms, much like nitrogen does in the salt waters of the Gulf. Along the upper Mississippi, numerous lakes are taking on the qualities of dead zones, having been transformed into unswimmable pools of green algae. Currently, Lake Pepin is enduring many assaults, but it is excess sediment from upriver that may doom this fragile body of water. Soil loss from the landscape is causing Lake Pepin to vanish at an alarming rate.
The lake will be filled with sediment in 300 years. There will be just a river flowing through it. It will no longer be a lake. The upper end of Lake Pepin, which is filling in most rapidly, is also the shallowest, and we estimate about the upper third will be gone in about a century, which is short enough for people to think about. But you realize that this is a lake that's been around 10,000 years, and it will be gone in little more than a few generations.
Because Pepin is a naturally formed lake on the Mississippi, its quiet waters have allowed sediment to accumulate through the ages, affording scientists a rare glimpse into the river's past. Lake Pepin is filling in at 10 times its natural rate. But these scientists aren't exactly sure why. Core samples taken from the riverbed show a marked increase in erosion rates beginning around the 1850s.
Untie it? Yep.
This increase in sediment corresponds to a pivotal chapter in American history when settlers arrived on the land and busted the virgin prairie to make way for agriculture. In the span of a century, over 95% of America's prairies vanished. Land that had taken thousands of years to assemble by the forces of nature fell to the steel moldboard plow, a 19th century invention that modernized farming. At the same time, ditches were dug and clay pipes were placed underground to drain wetlands and keep water off the land. Over 50% of America's wetlands also vanished, robbing nature of her sponges.
When we came across the continent, as Wendell Berry said, cutting the forests and plowing the prairies, we've never known what we were doing because we've never known what we were undoing.
Let's open up this thing right here. See what this looks like.
By the 1950s, this wholesale conversion of the land was mostly complete. But this time frame is when the cores reveal an unexpected surprise.
The sediment accumulation rate continues to increase and maybe even accelerate after 1950. We have no more land to convert. And that really has been the question, is why does this continue to happen?
Currently, 85% of the sediment that is swallowing up Lake Pepin comes from the muddy Minnesota River and its tributaries, whose landscape is dominated by farmland. But it is also a young glacial valley, naturally prone to erosion.
This is a very young landscape. The rivers are working incredibly fast, delivering sediment from this landscape as they carve into it and drain it. And we're trying to understand the balance of natural sediment sources to Lake Pepin and any kind of change in that we've caused by farming the landscape.
Using a technique called radioisotope fingerprinting, Jennings and her colleagues discovered that the majority of sediment is no longer coming from agricultural fields, but rather from places like these bluffs and stream banks and nearby ravines. But why? Though ravines like this one contribute less sediment than the bluffs and stream banks, they hold an important clue. This pipe, located at the top of the ravine, is a tile outlet, which drains water from an adjacent farm field. An extensive network of tiles rest under America's agricultural soils, draining them of water to increase crop yields. The more that drainage intensifies in an area, shown by these yellow drainage ditches and tile lines, the fewer wetlands remain. Today, these plastic pipes represent the modern version of clay tiles. Each year, throughout the Mississippi watershed, countless miles of perforated pipes are placed underground to drain water off agricultural land.
This is the largest hydrological alteration of a landscape you can imagine. This is across the entire Corn Belt, and it's totally invisible. And most people looking at this landscape today would have no idea what we've done to it.
Much of the sediment that is filling up Lake Pepin today is turning out to be a story about the movement of water.
Drainage, agricultural drainage, increases the delivery of nitrogen to our rivers, nitrate in particular. And we have seen a steady increase in measured nitrate concentrations in our rivers over the last several decades.
When water moves, sediment and chemicals move with it. In the non-growing season, water that is currently trickling out of this pipe will gush in a rainstorm, rapidly evacuating water off the farmland.
You've got basically a fire hose at the top of that ravine just kind of spraying into the walls. And once you start unraveling or cutting a ravine open like that, it's very hard for it to stabilize again. So starting here and down to Lake Pepin, we could be picking up sediment the whole way because of this extra water.
Some people argue that greater rainfall over the last 20 years is responsible for the surge in sediment seen in Lake Pepin. But this ravine and its neighbor, an undisturbed ravine with no tile outlet at its top, suggest otherwise.
if you see ravines within a few hundred yards of one another, one that's raw, it looks like a fire hose coming out of that collector pipe, and another that's this peaceful ravine with a feather in the top of it, you can't argue for climate change between these two ravines. They're neighbors, they're neighboring ravines. The difference is the land use at the top.
Land practices over the last century and a half have turned the tides on Lake Pepin, jeopardizing its future. Removing water off the land has also led to a fuller river, one that may be more prone to flooding. With fewer wetlands or prairies left to absorb this extra water, it eventually works its way down to the Gulf, awash in chemicals. Here in Baton Rouge, Dr. Gene Turner is monitoring nitrogen levels in the river.
The measurements on the river go all the way back to 1905 and 1906 in New Orleans. And in that period of time, we've seen the nitrate in the river about triple or quadruple in the concentration of nitrate.
To reduce the harmful impact of the dead zone, a federal, state, and tribal task force recommended a 30% reduction of nitrogen in the Mississippi River. Such an ambitious goal is at odds with the federal Farm Bill.
The higher the Farm Bill payments per acre, the higher the runoff off that area. And it isn't that I'm at all suggesting what to do with the Farm Bill, but I'm saying that the money is there to use the Farm Bill payments in a different way to change land use practices.
Currently, the Farm Bill supports a few commodity crops in the Midwest, primarily corn and soybeans, which are annual monocultures, row crops that grow on the land for just a few months in the summer. The rest of the year, brown soils, stripped of vegetation, lay bare and exposed to the harsh assaults of wind and water erosion, in some cases for as long as 7 months. Further complicating matters, nitrogen fertilizer is applied in the fall and spring when there is little or no ground cover to protect it from rainstorms and subsequent leakage into the river. Currently, scientists estimate that agricultural lands in the U.S. are losing soil 10 times faster than it can be replenished.
Soil is as much of a non-renewable resource as oil, and in the long run, more important than oil.
A well-tilled field like this one used to be the gold standard in agriculture, but today, its eroding hilltops indicate a loss of valuable topsoil and an inevitable decline in productivity.
In the long, long term, we want to be able to not only feed ourselves well, we would like our children and our grandchildren, we'd like people alive in 100 years and 1,000 years and 10,000 years to have land that is just as fertile and can give them the food they need just like we get from our land. Now in the United States, we've been farming land in some places for 400 years. In the prairie, it's been about 120 or 130 years. We can't afford to have that land eroded down into rivers and lakes and the ocean, so we have to keep it there.
One solution to keeping soil and fertilizers in place is this littered field of corn residue left over from last year's harvest. Practicing a new conservation technique called strip-till farming, Dick Gerhardt is planting his seeds in between the old corn rows. The leftover residue protects the soil from erosion, reduces fertilizer runoff, and adds organic material back to the soil.
You know, it's a paradigm shift here when you start seeing that much residue left in the field. To me, that environment is so perfect, and then I love the fact that those old rows are sitting there with roots rotting and forming the next perfect environment when I move over the following year and go on top of that.
With the advent of what is called precision agriculture, farmers like Gerhardt use an advanced GPS system to steer their tractors within a single inch of accuracy on the field, saving them fuel and fertilizer costs. Seeds and nitrogen fertilizer are concentrated into 8-inch strips of soil rather than spread over the entire field. The same is true for manure.
You're using half to 2/3 of the inputs, still getting the crop, and then and having the situation of great residue out there and what it's doing to stop soil erosion both from wind and water, it's been a huge step in a short period of time.
The Gerhardts no longer buy phosphorus for their operation, but instead access local hog manure as a source of fertility. Manure also has the added benefit of building up the soil along with the corn residue. All these efforts by Gerhardt are paying off. He has maintained his crop yields while reducing his use of nitrogen fertilizer by a full 30%.
We need those community champions in the agriculture industry just like we need them in other industries. It's those people that'll set the pace for what we do, in the next decade.
Some farmers are conserving soil and improving water quality by returning vulnerable cropland into permanent pasture. That is exactly what Dan Coughlin did after fighting an uphill battle against soil loss on this former 500-acre corn and soybean farm.
We actually went from probably 6,000 pounds of soil eroded per acre to probably 600 or less.
He decided to become a grass-fed beef farmer and partner with Todd Churchill. Together, they believe that growing acres of pasture rather than corn to feed their cattle could go a long way toward repairing the land and water quality.
Everything looks really pretty slicked off. The cows in particular look really good.
Yeah, the cows, well, actually the cows, they actually do better when it's a little drier.
Yeah. Personally, I just think it's foolish to try to fight against nature. My philosophy is that I want to capture every bit of sunlight and every drop of water that falls on my land. And I do that with permanent pasture. I do that by making sure that my soils are balanced in a way that they can soak up the moisture so it doesn't run off. And permanent pasture cover and grazing helps to do that.
Since the 1950s, feedlots have represented the predominant model for beef production in America. The cattle are fed a diet rich in corn, a more energy-dense food than grass, which hastens their time to market. Today, Americans consume on average 63 pounds of beef per year. Partly to meet this demand, more than 50% of the corn grown in America is devoted to livestock feed, but not without a cost.
We're losing 7 pounds of topsoil for every pound of food we raise in this country, and that's clearly not sustainable. It's possible to fix a lot of the things that are wrong with agriculture, but when the topsoil's moved from Minnesota into the Gulf of Mexico, it's pretty expensive to bring it back. Virtually impossible. So we have to think about how do we raise calories of food in a way that doesn't destroy the topsoil, doesn't move the topsoil downriver.
When Coughlin restored his farm to pasture, he no longer needed to work the land or apply synthetic fertilizers.
Fertilizer prices for the farmers last year went from $300 a ton to $1,000 a ton. When the corn price went up, everybody wanted an extra buck for this and that. And my costs didn't change on this farm. When the corn price went to $7, it didn't change. When fuel went to $4, my cost on the farm did not change.
A major benefit of perennial grasses are their massive root systems, which contribute to the soil's biological health, enabling it to filter chemicals and store water year-round. In contrast, the roots of corn, an annual plant, are shallow and live for just a few months. In times of drought, perennial grasses are especially resilient.
The last few years we've been short of moisture, but the quality of our grass has continued to improve even through drought.
An accountant by training, Churchill now runs Thousand Hills Cattle Company in partnership with over 50 grass-fed beef farmers like Dan. Although grass-fed beef represents less than 1% of the market today, Churchill believes its future is bright.
It's hard to know which is the primary benefit and which are the serendipities. Is the primary benefit clean water and the serendipity is having gourmet grass-fed beef, or is the primary benefit gourmet grass-fed beef and the serendipity is no soil erosion and vastly and wildlife habitat, more birds, and vastly improved water quality?
Of course, if he is going to succeed, it all comes down to taste.
What really makes it work is when people try our ground beef and they say, wow, that's what beef tasted like 40 years ago. That is the best beef I've eaten. That's what I remember beef being like when I was a kid on my family's farm.
Churchill's beef brisket is a featured item here at this community dinner celebrating local foods at the Walker Art Center in Minneapolis. As consumers become more connected to the origin of their food, its costs, its impact on the environment, and their health, they are beginning to drive changes on the land. For Chef Scott Pampu, cooking with local foods means one thing.
Sustainability is the term. Sustainability, just at its core, is to sustain. And that sustains people, that sustains the garden, that sustains the earth, that sustains the food, the health, the economics. It's all tied together that way.
Another way that farmers are protecting soil and water is by planting a diverse mixture of crops on the land year-round. Jack Hedin owns a successful organic farm in Rushford, Minnesota.
With the organic system, we use no synthetic chemical of any sort. What we're trying to do is feed a deeper background process that not only provides, I feel, a more balanced, a more sustainable type of fertility for our crop, but also contributes to this long-term vitality of the soil that is the very foundation of any kind of a sustainable system.
Americans obtain a small fraction of their fruits and vegetables from the Midwest, which is dominated by commodity crops like corn. But when local consumer demand prompted Hedin to rent land from his neighbor to grow more fruits and vegetables, he was in for a wake-up call.
This area was claimed by King Corn generations ago, and the USDA and the federal government have done a very good job of supporting the production of corn and ultimately soybeans and other commodity crops on these very best fields. But the way the law is presently written, there are severe penalties for farmers who attempt to grow fruits and vegetables on these very best soils. We rented a small portion of a large farm to the north and east of us here, and for the 17 acres that we rented, the farmer was penalized his entire farm payment for the rest of the 280 acres of that particular farm, and the result was effectively a $9,000 penalty that we were forced to absorb in order to continue renting that area. The fact that federal farm policy limits the growth of this industry means that there will be fewer people producing crops, and that the economies of scale and that the growth of this whole industry will be curtailed. And that means many things for consumers, among them higher prices and less availability of local and regionally produced fruits and vegetables.
Over the last 2 decades, organic food has represented the fastest growing segment of the food industry. Local customers are the backbone of Hedin's business.
It's grown locally, and there's not a lot of chemicals in it, so it's more organic. I think it's just our health in general, and just keeping the chemicals out of the ground and the groundwaters.
Over the winter, Hedin protects his fields with blankets of clover, winter rye, and vetch to reduce erosion and build soil fertility. These so-called winter cover crops also pull nitrogen directly from the atmosphere.
Clover or alfalfa or any number of things planted in the ground here between this can take a certain amount of nitrogen out of the air and make it available into the roots of the crops here between the rows and in the rows as well. And that is absolutely a very natural biological form of fertility generation in the field.
Hedin's goal is to give back more than he takes, a lesson he learned from his great-grandfather, who was also a farmer.
He had taken a great deal as a young man plowing up the high-grass prairie, and when he became older, he saw that that balance of give and take was not a fair one, and that it was necessary and important and right that he begin to give back.
Here in Windham, Minnesota, in the heart of corn and soybean country, a similar ethic guides Tony Thompson. He and his nieces stroll through a prairie that holds beneath it some of the richest soils in the world. Despite the temptation to sacrifice this land to the plow, generations of the Thompson family have kept this prairie alive.
This prairie is so rare and so diverse, and these plants are highly evolved and suited to this landscape that may number well over 300 plant species in this little prairie remnant. And it's a mistake to think that the agricultural production from this landscape is not important. It's of paramount importance to my family, but at the same time, ecological function, the stability of the landscape, of the ecology, is also very important.
The Thompsons' 4,000-acre farm is a showcase for what the future of farming could look like. In addition to prairie remnants, there are numerous wetlands interspersed among their corn and soybean fields, which contribute to the farm's diverse landscape.
You have to be careful in agriculture because we're mere humans and we try to simplify the process. We try to provide everything that the corn and soybeans need, and to do that we have to simplify. We remove weeds, we remove competitors to get maximum yield, but we create what might be a more fragile system.
These wetlands on the Thompson farm teem with life and are filled with native vegetation that attracts a diverse array of wildlife. Wetlands also function like nature's kidneys, cleansing the water.
This wetland makes it pretty clear that slowing the water down in the landscape gives the local ecological community an opportunity to trap those nutrients that are in the water and slow the movement of those nutrients to the Gulf. So the benefit downstream is tremendous.
Every summer, Tony hosts a party on his farm to bring together farmers, consumers, and scientists to discuss agricultural and ecological issues. One of today's guest speakers is addressing the issue of water drainage on farmland.
If we've got a tile and a drainage system out in a field, we're generally putting those around 4 feet deep where we've got the laterals.
Whatever problems result from drainage have been, for a long time, mostly invisible to the farmer who has done the drainage. That water goes on downstream, and it's hard to believe that one additional little trickle of water can be causing anybody hardship downstream. But as these little trickles accumulate, it becomes a significant quantity of water that's being hurried on downstream, and there are problems being created.
Here amid Thompson's productive corn rows,
when you look at this system, basically this is what it would look like in the field.
The group is learning about an experimental way to hold water back on the land called controlled drainage. This system, with its movable gates, allows farmers to slow or hold back water, especially in the non-growing season, and thus keep the fertilizers nitrogen and phosphorus from leaking into the river.
We've seen anywhere from a 50 to 80% reduction in nitrate loss and phosphorus loss on an annual basis. When you look at that over a lot of acres potentially where this practice could be implemented, where it's appropriate, that's a big reduction in nitrogen and phosphorus loads that would go down the streams.
Simply holding back the water or slowing its movement on the land may be the most important step farmers can take to improve water quality and reduce the dead zone. Significantly, in 1985, the Farm Bill initiated a long trend of increased funding for conservation efforts on the land. At present, the Thompson family receives conservation payments for marginal land or buffer strips along creeks that help to reduce erosion, slow down water, and minimize the amount of fertilizers that escape into the streams and rivers. Dick Gerhardt also participates in this conservation program. One example is the land adjacent to his home, which used to be a cornfield. Since planting perennial grass, his creek is cleaner, and a bald eagle has made his home in a nearby tree. Another option is holding ponds, like this one on Dan Coughlin's property. But in all these examples, the payments from the conservation section of the Farm Bill are limited and not as rewarding as payments for maximizing production of a few commodity crops.
It's a small part of all the farmland in the United States that is in the Conservation Reserve Program. The vast majority of land sort of go in the opposite direction. The rewards are for doing the opposite of being environmentally wise.
Farmers and scientists recognize that a reallocation of funds toward conservation efforts is needed to make corn and soybean farms sustainable. New research shows that just a 10 to 15% increase in perennials, winter cover crops, or the restoration of wetlands on vulnerable land could vastly improve water quality and soil health.
As a society, what do we want to get back for a return on our investment? So we can spend that dollar and get X many bushels of corn or bushels of soybeans or bushels of wheat and be happy with that. That's what we're doing today. But we also could spend that same dollar and get those bushels of corn or bushels of soybeans or bushels of wheat, but we also could have clean water. We could have increased biodiversity in our animal and plant world. We could have safe drinking water.
For now, Tony receives no payments for the prairie grasses on his farm, but he does have a modest business selling seeds for prairie restoration.
We typically try to burn in late May or early June for seed production. For the warm season grasses, the native warm season grasses, that stimulates them to flower and produce seed, and at the same time it removes the competing non-native plants or discourages the competing non-native plants.
Restoring more prairies to the landscape would provide many benefits, or what is called ecological services, including cleaner water and less leakage of nitrogen.
Everybody's got a stake because we live and breathe in the same air and the same environment that everybody else does. And if you have an ag production system that's producing ecological services, how can we get those payments back to the farmer or the landowner for those services they provide?
It's a burning question that may find an answer here at Coda Energy, a combined heat and power plant in Shakopee, Minnesota.
Okay, kiln 7 will be off in 10 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Fueled entirely on bio-waste products, this green facility has, in effect, removed the equivalent of 30,000 automobiles off the road. Its fuel sources are procured locally and include wood chips, as well as the discards of a well-known breakfast cereal.
These are oat hulls that come from General Mills. Oat hulls is a byproduct that they process oat flour for the production of Cheerios. Now this comes to our plant, and then we generate it into energy, which produces steam and then therefore heat and power.
By utilizing waste heat, Coda is about twice as efficient as a coal plant and produces energy for its neighbor and partner, RAR, the second largest malt processing plant in the world. Coda also fulfills its own energy needs, as well as having surplus energy to sell on the grid. The idea for this biofuel plant was sparked by the Shakopee-Medwakatan Sioux community. Their long-term goal is to use this self-renewing prairie as a source for biofuel.
For this community and most Indian communities, maintaining sovereignty is one of their primary objectives. It was appealing on many levels. One, I guess, on the basic business model level, that it could produce income by providing a power source for the community to run itself and be freed somewhat from exterior power supplies or dependence on them.
In this era of renewable energy, prairie grasses represent a promising next-generation biofuel crop that offers countless environmental benefits.
This is a fuel source. These grasses and flowers or forbs out here reproduce themselves. They don't require any fertilizer, they don't require annual tillage, and the prairie actually serves as a carbon sink.
The Shakopee tribe is banking on the prairie's potential as a renewable energy source and have already reclaimed hundreds of acres of land for this purpose.
We get the landscape back, we get the wildlife back, you get some financial benefits, you get environmental benefits, you get a significant reduction in pollutant output. It seemed like it was a win all the way around for the community.
We want water quality. We want a viable Gulf of Mexico fishery. We want swimmable, fishable waters, and we want our food and we want our energy.
At a crossroads, the future health of America's agricultural lands and waters depends upon a variety of solutions. Some farmers, like Dan Coughlin, have already taken a first step. Others, like the Gerhardts and Tony Thompson, have been strategic about the positive changes they have introduced on the land. But farmers can't do this alone.
This isn't their fault. If they don't apply fertilizer, they're going to go out of business. So we have to find a way that they can stay in business and do things wisely. I do think that that ultimately is going to come from modifying the U.S. Farm Bill to pay farmers not just for the crops, the bushels they produce, but for the other benefits they produce.
The country needs to turn a corner toward a sustainable future that will benefit everyone.
If we want to leave a planet that is similar or as good as it is today or better for our children and our grandchildren, we're going to have to recognize what we're doing to it, and we're going to have to make adjustments as a society.
For more information on troubled waters, visit bellmuseum.org. Troubled Waters, a Mississippi River story, is a special production of the University of Minnesota's Bell Museum of Natural History. Funding has been provided by Minnesota Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, the McKnight Foundation, National Science Foundation, Mississippi River Fund, and these funding partners.